Now we have an asset that has a slightly higher performance ratio. So let's keep moving on and looking at different examples. Now in example 3, imagine that we have an asset, this time we're using percents. We have an asset that goes up 900%. Pretty good, right? But to get that 900%, you also had to suffer 1000% volatility, going up and down, moving around like crazy. How many drawdowns would you have had? Who the hell knows? But to get this 900% return, you would have had to take on a lot of risk. But the rewards were incredibly high as well. So you can see that this performance ratio would be a 9 out of 10, meaning that the ratio is 0.9. And in this example, you can see that you've taken on more risk than you've taken on in reward. Even though the reward was incredibly high and you 9x'd your money, you had to take on an incredibly high amount of risk to actually achieve this. Now in the final example here, what we have is an asset that went up 500%, but we only had to suffer 400% worth of risk or volatility in order to achieve that. So our performance ratio of 5/4 is actually a ratio of 1.25. Now, in this example, what we've actually received is an asset that has a higher level of performance than risk. You can see the theme here. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find assets that give us more performance for each unit of risk. That way, we can call ourselves rational investors. We're not irrationally investing in anything that is more dangerous than it necessarily ought to be. This is the way that rational investors invest. This is the way that good quantitative investors invest. And no normal person would willingly want to choose something that gives them a lower performance ratio than 1, because that means you're just taking on a huge amount of risk for each unit of reward, and that's not rational. So let's move on. I'm quickly going to mention again for anybody that's financially inclined listening to this lecture, I do understand that the performance of an asset is the annualized geometric rate of return, and that the risk of an asset is its standard deviation or semivariance, depending on which measurement you're taking it from. This is all covered in the investing masterclass, so what I'm just trying to do here is put in a couple of generalized examples for the beginners so that they understand what we're doing. So that was a little bit of a disclaimer for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually revisit very quickly a principle that we've looked at before, so that we can look at where the incentives for an individual trying to do this type of analysis may kind of get off the tracks. It's like a train that gets derailed. You may get derailed if you accidentally misinterpret what I've said in previous lectures. So I'm going to try and accumulate this together so that we can make the best decision possible. So if you remember back to one of my previous lectures, I was talking to you about market beta, and also with correlation, how the whole market is essentially a leveraged Bitcoin bet. What this means is that if you're going down the market cap size and you're looking through the different cryptocurrency assets, what you're actually looking at is a whole bunch of leveraged Bitcoin bets. This means, in essence, you would have BNB, for example, and that might be the equivalent to Bitcoin with 1.5 times leverage. Maybe you have XRP, Ripple, which could be the equivalent of BTC with 1.6 times leverage. Maybe you have Polkadot, which would be the amount of beta, market beta, equivalent to BTC with 1.7 times leverage. And as you go down in market cap size, the amount of relative beta increases. So this is where things can get derailed. If you're looking at this and from a quantitative standpoint, and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, Adam has told us that we want to use numbers, and essentially if we go down in market cap size, we're receiving more performance for our Bitcoin bets than if we were just holding Bitcoin itself. Therefore, I want to hold the smallest asset possible. This is not what we're talking about, because this actually is neglecting the risk asset side of this dimension. So what we're looking at right now, if we're looking at the market beta of these assets and going down in market cap size, is we're just saying, oh, well, look at the rewards. Look at how much extra performance I can get out of these, but we're not looking at the risk either. So this is where things get one level deeper, and the reality of this type of mindset is revealed for its dirty truth. In practice, generally, performance ratios actually decrease as we go lower in market cap size. You will find that even though the beta increases the amount of potential performance of these assets, what you'll find is actually the variability or the risk, the volatility itself actually increases faster than any of the reward measurements that you can have. So if you were going down the list and you were looking at BNB, it would be a performance ratio of 0.8. If you were looking at XRP, it would be a performance ratio of 0.6. If you were looking at DOT, it might be a 0.6. As you're going down through these market cap sizes, the risk increases faster than the potential rewards. This means that holding mid caps or smaller caps is incredibly dangerous, and only under the very, very most optimal of circumstances should an individual attempt to buy them. This lesson wouldn't be complete if I didn't give you a secret nugget of information that you get to find out in the masterclass, and that is that Ethereum is actually the asset with the highest performance ratio in the entire market, measured over multiple different time horizons using many different measurements. So Ethereum is the one to look out for. It's been this way for about a year and a half now. At the time of recording, this is accurate, and of course, things can change all of the time. So what you need to do in the market, the analysis that you need to perform in order to identify these assets with the highest performance ratios, we'll be exploring that in the masterclass. So if at any point this lecture becomes irrelevant or outdated, go into the masterclass and understand how to perform this analysis yourself in a proper manner so that you can find the asset that is most efficient for your purposes. One quick note before we summarize, don't talk to me about shitcoins either. If you have an asset like a shitcoin where you have a maximum downside amount of loss of like negative 100%, or if you somehow work the maths to say to me, oh look, but the amount of volatility in this shitcoin is constrained to so many 1,000% or whatever, but the amount of potential rewards might be several 100,000% or whatever. Even in this case, if you somehow fudge the numbers to make it look like it's some sort of amazing bet, it's still not precisely accurate because you wouldn't be taking into consideration expectancy. I just had to include this thing in here just in case anybody tries to clown me, or if anybody tries to like pull some bullshit with shitcoin gambling, which obviously is not what we're here to do. So, summarizing all the things that we've spoken about so far, number one, first and foremost, qualitative things that you think matter do not matter. I don't want to hear the stories. I don't give a fuck, okay? Nobody cares. The only person that cares is you, your brain, because you've managed to come up with a story. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel creative. It makes you feel insightful. I need to remind you that your ability to feel good about yourself is not a valid investing strategy. Point number two is that in general, the whole market is simply leveraged Bitcoin bets. And number three, and maybe the most important point as well, is that the quality of an asset is derived from its risk-adjusted performance. It's only when you have both factors working together to inform you that you have the best possible chance of identifying an asset which is good and useful and rational for you to invest in. More details on how to do a deep dive into this type of analysis so that you can apply it to the whole market and even improve it and increase it to its absolute highest degree. All of this is covered in the Investing Masterclass. So, with that being said, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.